So today I am continuing the same lesson, chemical reactions and equations. Okay. So today I am going to discuss mainly about the corrosion, rancidity and the precipitation reaction. So first we'll discuss about the corrosion. What is meant by corrosion? We have seen in our home there are many metals like iron, so they will get corroded. But why they are getting corroded, we don't know. So what is the reason behind this? Because these metals are exposed to air or air, moisture or acid, and because of that, when hydrated oxide layer is formed on that metal, that is and that hydrated oxide only weakens that metal. So we just call it as a corrosion. Okay, so because of that hydrated oxide, that metals gets weakened and we call it as a corrosion of metals. So the definition of the corrosion I'll write down here. Once the metal exposed, when metal exposed to air, acid or moisture, that metal gets oxidized. That metal gets oxidized and hydrated oxide layer is formed on that metal. It weakens that metal, is called corrosion. Okay, so this is about the corrosion. We can take an example of rusting of iron, and we have seen mainly the ladies who are wearing we can call it as a leg ring. So that are silver in color, but because of the corrosion process, they are turning into black color. Like now copper, we have seen copper also. Copper actually in a red brown color, but once it is getting corrosion or getting oxidized, then it is forming a green coating on that. So these are the examples of corrosion. So I'll write down the examples of corrosion here. Examples. One is rusting of iron. So mainly in rusting of iron, what happens? That layer forms in the case of rusting of iron. So its weight will increase or decrease. Then along with the corrosion process, that iron weight will increase or decrease. This is a common question for the board exam as well as the competitive exam. Actually, the weight will be increase or decrease in this case. Most of the people think that weight will be decreasing because it is undergoing corrosion process. But actual reason is the actual thing is weight of iron is increasing in case of rusting of iron. Okay, so weight here it will increase. Weight of iron increase once weight of iron increase once it gets oxidized or once it undergoes a corrosion. Once it undergoes corrosion. Okay. So next is black coating on silver. Black coating on silver. And green coating on copper. So these are the examples of corrosion process. But these are undergoing the corrosion process, but we have to prevent it, no? So for that reason, what we have to do? So for that reason, we are applying painting, then we are applying grease or oil, then we are doing the galvanization process. So what is in my galvanization process? Galvanization process, we are applying one layer, zinc kind of coating on that metal, so it will prevent from oxidation to that metal, and that metal will be safe. So for that reason we are using galvanization. And the next we are applying painting, then we are alloying also. Already we discussed. Alloying means what? We are mixing, means mixture of metals or one metal or two more metals, or metals and non-metals. We are mixing it so that it will prevent from corrosion. Again, we are applying tin coating and chromium coating for the prevention of corrosion. So I will write here all the prevention method of rusting corrosion process. prevent from corrosion, what we are doing? To prevent from corrosion. First of all, we are applying painting by painting. Next, we are applying grease or oil. Then galvanization. Zinc coating on any metal. Zinc coating, like on aluminium we are doing. So zinc coating on any metal, that is called galvanization. And fourth one is, we can just call it as a coating and or plating, tin plating and chromium plating. Chromium plating and alloying it. If someone wants to note it, they can note it, alloying it. So these are the prevention to prevent from corrosion. We are using this method by painting, applying grease or oil, galvanization. So we have seen grease or oil. We are in case of any machines, their surface is very rough. Then to make it smooth, we are using grease, and it will also prevent from the corrosion also. So then next galvanization. Then by plating chromium and tin, then alloying it. So alloying means, already we discussed, mixture of two metals or metals and non-metals to prevent it from corrosion. Okay, so these are the methods of to prevent from corrosion. So next topic we are discussing about the rancidity. Rancidity. So what is meant by rancidity? For example, food. In case of food, rancidity happens in food only. Once food is exposed to air, means it will get oxidized. The food containing oil and fats, these foods, if they are getting exposed to air, then what happens? They get oxidized, and that because of that oxidation process, it gives its color it will change its color, taste, and their smell also. And the food which is undergoing rancidity, it gives a very unpleasant smell. For example, any food we have seen, if you are keeping in air, the food containing oil, and we can take any like chips or any papad, already we have seen, after keeping a long time in air, it gives a very bad smell, as well as one oily layer will be there. So that is only called, it is getting oxidized. Okay, so rancidity means what? Any food which is exposed to air, it will get oxidized and gives its bad smell and bad color or bad taste. Rancidity. Food which exposes to air, gets oxidized and change its color, taste and smell. We can call it as a rancidity. Normally, which food undergoes a rancidity? The food containing oil and fat. The food containing oil and fat. Food containing oil and fat. So this food gets rancid once we are keeping in air. So to prevent from rancidity, what we are doing? We already discussed about, we know what we are doing. We are eating chips, no? So in that chips, which air will be there? We are replacing air by nitrogen. Why? Because of nitrogen process, it will not undergo oxidation. So we are normally, that chip manufacturer people, they are adding nitrogen gas in that packet. So it will be safe. It will not undergo a rancid process. Okay, so the methods of prevention of rancidity we are discussing now here. Prevention of rancidity. Rancidity. First of all, we are not keeping any oil, the food containing oil and fat, we are not keeping in air. So we are keeping in a food tight container. So we are keeping food in a tight container. Tight container. Then next is we are keeping in a refrigerated, under 0 degree Celsius we are keeping the food. So refrigerating food. Refrigerating food. And in some food we are adding antioxidants so that it will not undergo a oxidation process. So addition of antioxidants. Addition of antioxidants. Addition of antioxidants. Antioxidant to food. And next replacing air by nitrogen, that we have seen in case of chips packet, replacing air by nitrogen. So these are the prevention method of rancidity. So anyone who want to note it, they can note it. Okay. So next we can discuss about the precipitation reaction. So already we discussed about the precipitation reaction in case of double displacement reaction actually. In double displacement reaction, we have seen there were two compounds like a sodium sulfate and barium chloride. So in this case, exchange of ion takes place and each compound displaces to each one another, because here now it is a sodium, it is having a positive charge. So sulfate has a negative charge, barium has a positive charge, chlorine has a negative charge. So how they are forming here? So opposite charges they get attracted and forms a compound here. So now sodium is reacting with the barium. It is chlorine. Okay, so it is reacting with the chlorine because opposite charges. So sodium Na2, it forms Na2Cl, NaCl. This is a byproduct actually, NaCl. And again barium, it has a plus charge, it has a negative, sulfate has a negative charge, and it forms a barium sulfate. Okay, so now here this barium sulfate, it is forming a white precipitation. So white precipitate. What is that white precipitate? In a reaction in which the compound, insoluble compound is formed. So that insoluble compound is only we can call it as a precipitation. So white precipitation is forming of barium sulfate, white PPT. So this reaction we can call it as a precipitation reaction. In this reaction what is happening? We are getting a precipitation form of compound product. So we can call it as a precipitation reaction. I'll write down the definition for the precipitation reaction. Precipitation reaction. Okay, so a reaction in which an insoluble solid is formed. Insoluble solid compound is formed. Compound formed, that is only called precipitation. Precipitate, PPT. Okay, so this reaction is called a precipitation reaction. So in this reaction, white PPT is formed of barium sulfate. So this is about the precipitation reaction. So tomorrow I will discuss next topic. Thank you.